In August 2024, Ukrainian forces penetrated Russian territory in Kursk, after which Ukraine claimed control over approximately 1,300 square kilometers of Russian land. Just about 10 days ago, the Ukrainian military stated that their control in the Kursk region had shrunk to around 500 square kilometers. Russian forces have completely surrounded the Ukrainian troops in the area. According to the latest updates from military analysts and the Institute for the Study of War, Russian forces have taken control of multiple settlements in the Kursk region and are advancing toward the town of Sudzha, where fighting is currently underway. Some military analysts suggest that Russia's recent progress stems from a temporary suspension of military intelligence provided to Ukraine by the United States. Of course, we cannot confirm this. However, we now know that Ukraine has regained access to this intelligence. Yet the situation there remains deeply concerning. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has stated that commanders of Ukrainian forces in Sudzha, Kursk, are doing everything possible to save the lives of Ukrainian soldiers. On March 12th, Russian President Vladimir Putin, dressed in military attire, visited Kursk for the first time since the Ukrainian incursion. In his speech, he explicitly ordered the Russian armed forces to fully liberate the Kursk region, demanding the swift defeat of Ukrainian troops still operating there and the restoration of control over Russia's border. He specifically praised standout units such as the 76th Guards Air Assault Division, the 155th Guards Naval Infantry Brigade, the 34th Guards Motorized Rifle Brigade, and the Akhmat Special Forces, signaling that Russia is deploying elite forces to accomplish this mission. Putin emphasized that Ukrainian personnel committing crimes against civilians would be treated as terrorists, and noted that foreign mercenaries are not protected under the Geneva Conventions, reflecting a hardline stance. He also proposed plans to establish a security zone along the border in the future, possibly to prevent further Ukrainian incursions. Putin's tone was brimming with confidence as he praised the combat capabilities of his troops and expressed approval of the General Staff's command efforts. He referenced the dire situation of encircled Ukrainian soldiers, urging Russian forces to avoid unnecessary killing, while framing it as both a military and political victory. This may suggest significant progress in Russia's military operations in Kursk. Russia claims control of 86% of Kursk territory. The Russian military has declared that the Northern Army Group has liberated over 1,100 square kilometers of Kursk territory, accounting for more than 86% of the area previously occupied by Ukraine. They claim the Ukrainian Armed Forces, AFU, have suffered heavy losses, including 67,000 troops and 7,000 military vehicles, among them 391 tanks and 2,780 armored vehicles. Russia specifically noted that Ukraine concentrated its main forces in Kursk during the fall and winter, attempting to establish a strategic foothold as a bargaining chip or to pin down Russian forces in Donbass, but these plans have completely failed. Specific progress includes units like the 155th Naval Infantry Brigade and the 34th Motorized Rifle Brigade liberated the village of Malaya Lokhnya and surrounding areas, forcing Ukrainian forces to retreat south. A combined assault team of over 600 personnel infiltrated Ukrainian rear lines through a 15-kilometer gas pipeline, catching them off guard and weakening their defenses. In the past 5 days, Russian forces have liberated 24 settlements and 259 square kilometers, reducing Ukraine's controlled area by 2.5 times. Russian troops have crossed the border into Ukraine's Sumy region, destroying Ukrainian reserves and expanding the security zone, while capturing 430 Ukrainian soldiers. Russia claims that the Ukrainian army group in Kursk has been isolated and is being systematically destroyed, with the goal of restoring full border control soon. According to the latest Russian updates, they have retaken Sudzha, the largest town in the Kursk region. These are images of Sudzha in ruins. This marks a significant shift in the 3-year war. Last August, Ukrainian forces seized this key town in Kursk. Ukrainian forces in Kursk. Despite Russia's claims of overwhelming victory, the situation for Ukrainian forces in Kursk is indeed dire. On August 6, 2024, Ukraine launched its first regular army offensive into Kursk, capturing parts of the territory in an attempt to create a buffer zone or negotiation leverage. However, facing Russia's full-scale counteroffensive, Ukraine may have lost the initiative. Ukrainian military commander General Oleksandr Syrsky stated that Russian aircraft have conducted so many strikes on Kursk that Sudzha has been nearly completely destroyed. Russia claims it has intensified civilian evacuations from the Sudzha area. In videos released by Russia, evacuees can be seen receiving mental health treatment at a temporary shelter. Putin's mention of encircled Ukrainian soldiers and Russia's claim of 430 surrenders suggests that Ukrainian forces in some areas are in distress, with supply lines likely cut off. In response, President Trump issued an urgent appeal on his social media platform, Truth Social, on March 14th. Yesterday, we had very good and productive discussions with President Vladimir Putin of Russia, and this horrible, bloody war has a very good chance of finally coming to an end. But at this very moment, thousands of Ukrainian troops are completely surrounded by the Russian military and in a very bad and vulnerable position. I have strongly requested to President Putin that their lives be spared. This would be a horrible massacre, one not seen since World War II. God bless them all. As fierce fighting continues in Kursk, President Putin, in response to President Trump's appeal, called on Ukrainian troops fighting in Kursk to surrender. He stated that if they lay down their arms, their lives would be spared. He added, "In order to effectively implement the call of the President of the United States of America, we need a corresponding order from the military and political leadership of Ukraine to its military units to lay down their arms and surrender." U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio reiterated the need for concessions, urging both Ukraine and Russia to compromise. After concluding G7 talks in Canada, Rubio said the only way to end the war is through negotiations, which requires concessions from both sides.
Is that there has to be some level of concessions. What those concessions are remains to be seen. That'll have to be part of the negotiation. But it's not going to be helpful to enter into those negotiations making blanket statements that may give an excuse for one side or the other not to participate in it.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said diplomatic efforts are pushing toward an end to the war, bringing peace closer. He noted that Ukraine has accepted the U.S. proposal for unconditional silence in the sky, at sea, and on the front lines. He further stated that he discussed the diplomatic situation with French President Macron, confirming France's steadfast support for Ukraine. European nations are meeting in Kyiv amid growing concerns that Washington and Moscow are growing too close. Macron, in a social media post, said he discussed ceasefire proposals with Zelensky and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Macron called on Moscow to halt its violence, accept the ceasefire proposal from Washington and Kyiv, and stop making statements aimed at delaying the process. Starmer accused Putin of not taking ceasefire attempts seriously, emphasizing that he must not be allowed to game the deal. President Trump's urging of Putin to spare all Ukrainian troops on the Kursk front and the Russian leader's call for those troops to surrender to save their lives seems somewhat at odds with each other. While we don't know exactly what's happening on the ground in Kursk, it appears the Russians are advancing or have surrounded the remaining Ukrainian forces in the region, likely poised to drive them out or annihilate them entirely. After all, this is the first time since World War II that Russian soil has been occupied by a foreign army. A key sign of whether Putin will show more flexibility and be willing to make concessions is whether he allows these troops to return to Ukraine or takes them prisoner as bargaining chips or hostages. For now, Putin says he's open to talks but has attached conditions regarding these troops and other issues. In a statement this week, Putin said, "Before I assess whether Ukraine is ready for a ceasefire, I'd like to first thank President Trump of the United States for his attention to resolving the Ukraine conflict. We all have enough problems to deal with. But many heads of state, like the President of the People's Republic of China, the Prime Minister of India, and the Presidents of Brazil and South Africa, have spent a great deal of time on this issue. We thank them all, as this is for a noble mission, to stop hostilities and human losses." This suggests he's open to a deal, but maintains demands for a cap on Ukrainian troop mobilization and an end to Western weapons deliveries to Ukraine. For now, these are demands Ukraine simply cannot meet. as they would leave it exposed, allowing Russia to regroup while Ukraine remains defenseless. Despite this, President Trump, in his latest speech at the Justice Department, said, "We're looking for the ceasefire now with Russia, and we've had some very good talks about it. We've had some very good responses." But he added, "It's still a long way to go. Let's wait and see." Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time.